Good afternoon, folks and friends. It's Thursday, September 17th. Time for my reflection during Thursdays in Black. I'm struggling. with this whole forgiveness thing again. First, I want to thank Laura Barton for her children's message on Sunday about forgiving and how we can work on it. I'm still working on it. It's not like I want to throw somebody in jail for a minor debt to me, but it's just the whole concept of forgiveness itself that's the struggle. I'm kind of liking Matthew's text that I read on Sunday, where we're supposed to forgive somebody 77 times, not like the alternative version, which says 70 times 7. I mean, I have to forgive somebody 490 times? And how am I ever going to keep a record of how many times I've forgiven somebody? Numbers aren't important, I guess. But back to the forgiveness piece. I'm frustrated and tired of the fighting over the inequalities of life. I'm frustrated and exhausted at the selfishness demonstrated by belittling remarks. How can I forgive those who are unwilling to live by the basic tenets of the faith we share? My struggle is with Christians, not with the other folks in the world who are not, but with Christians. Those of us who are called to follow the words that Jesus offered about loving one another, loving our neighbors as ourselves. It's that neighbor piece, I guess that's the problem. Jesus tells me that's the second greatest commandment. And in the story, to explain that to a lawyer who's asking about who is my neighbor, he offers the story of what we call the Good Samaritan. Well, did you know that the Samaritans were a people who were hated and despised by the Jews of the day? The Samaritans were the ones who didn't join in the detention of the Jews in Babylon. They were the ones who stayed behind. They didn't have the benefit of learning from the religious leaders while in Babylon the right way to do everything, including worship. No, they stayed in their homeland. And they dared to intermarry with others from non-Jewish background. Thus, they became unclean. For those of you who have followed Old Testament biblical scholarship for a long time, you know that the uncleanliness part is just massive for the Jews and for the Pharisees and the Sadducees. According to the Old Testament materials, they also didn't cooperate with the rebuilding of Jerusalem when the people were released from Babylon and came home. And remember always that the victors get to write the story, the history, both an important lesson for back then as well as our current climate. Victors get to write the stories. So these despised and hated people show up in a story that Jesus uses. Imagine the scandal Jesus created by telling a story in which this Samaritan becomes a champion. How dare he do such a thing? Remember the story? Jesus is asked, who is my neighbor? And he tells this story about a man who is beaten up and others walk by, and this Samaritan stops to take care of him, takes him to an inn, tells the innkeeper, I'm going on, but here's some money to take care of him, and when I come back, if you have greater expenses, I'll reimburse you. Then he asks the questioner, who was the neighbor? The man says, the one who had mercy. So being neighborly means showing mercy. Well, that's what the neighbor means. And so we ought to put aside our prejudices and our fears and see the value and the good news in others. Hard to do. Who's my neighbor today? All those people. Who am I to love? All those people. How am I to love them? Well, how about standing with them, or kneeling with them, or showing respect to them? How about acknowledging them as equals? This has been a most tumultuous year, and I know that many feel their rights and privileges have been destroyed or certainly stopped. We've been told to shelter at home for weeks. We've had our vocations questioned. Are we really essential? I would argue that all of us are essential, no matter what our vocation. However, in some vocations, we need to be very aware that in the case of this pandemic, we have a greater chance of spreading the disease than other vocations do. And in some of those essential vocations, spreading may happen even as the essential workers are fighting against the disease. We've also seen and been affected by our nation's original sin, racism. And this has caused us great anxiety. The deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and others have caused massive protests. There are days when I thought we have gone back to the future, if you will, back to the 1960s and 70s, when the civil rights movement was so visible and active. It's tough. All of this has caused some of my Christian siblings to say that it's unfair that protests get to go unpunished, while I'm not allowed to go out and eat at my favorite restaurant. Well, 3 of my favorite restaurant owners are anxious about us not coming to eat at their place, but they want to know how we're doing. I find that a nice twist on the story. Or there are others who just talk about our life not being open up enough, and maybe we should just call it a protest, since that would mean there'll be no problems for us. It all goes back to loving one's neighbor. Those are really hard words to live by, and I know that I don't always live up to the challenge that Jesus has put before me as one of his disciples. It was just the other day that I was headed out from the house in Joan's car. Not mine, hers. I have all of my stuff in my car, but I have nothing in her car. And I got to the store and I started walking from the car to the front door, and I realized, I don't have my mask. Of course not. It's in my car, not Joan's car. My car's back in the driveway. So what do? Go inside knowing that I'll only be there for a few seconds, and I'm healthy, so there's no problem. No big deal. After all, others do it all the time. Why can't I? Or do I get back in my car, drive home, get my mask, and return to the store to finish my purchasing? If I'm going to be serious about loving my neighbor, then I have to add the trip back to my house and get my mask to my day. No big deal, right? Well, as I was turning to return to the car, someone shouted across the parking lot to me, "Don't worry, you really don't need a mask. They won't kick you out of the store. It's your right to go in and buy stuff. And if they do kick you out, then don't ever go back again. They don't want to lose your business." I must have looked perplexed because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Somebody I don't know telling me what I should and shouldn't do. All the while he's standing with his hand on a door for a car that has a bumper sticker proudly proclaiming his involvement with a local Christian congregation. Perhaps the wrong words to say to me, because I gathered my steam and I said back across the parking lot to him, I will not go in without a mask, because it's not all about me. It's about me protecting the rest of God's people. It's about me loving my neighbor, whom I don't know. Okay, so that's one forgiveness for that guy. According to Matthew, I've got 76 more. I hope that I can remember who he is and how many times I've forgiven him. I wonder if I'll be able to keep up the count and the score. Hey, see you Sunday. Chris is on vacation, so we have somebody else pushing buttons, and I'm not sure who Joan's going to focus the camera on during worship singing time, or who Kevin will focus on during the singing time as well. But it'll be somebody. Also, Barbara Blue will be here as a stewardship speaker, giving us a temple talk on her stewardship life. So see you Sunday. And until then, remember, please wash your hands a couple of times a day, 20 seconds at a time. Then use the hand lotion to keep them nice and soft. If you're part of a family, gather around, hug one another, keep close to one another. If you're outside, away from your family, please keep 6 feet apart. And of course, wear your mask. And maybe make sure you have one in each car that you drive. Keep that physical distance, please. And of course, as Sergeant Esterhaus says, be careful out there. Bye-bye.